whatever is left of the Islamic Republic leadership clearly is saying a big no to Donald J. Trump. They are instead opting for continuity inside their regime. And in fact, I think they're doing more than that. They're essentially saying to Trump that, they're not going to be persuaded by his pressure campaign that we're seeing unfold, which is happening obviously mostly militarily, but also through the political messaging that Donald Trump has sent to Tehran over the course of the last 8, 9 days now. So the appointment of Mojtaba Khamenei is the reflection of the fact that the hardliners in that system now have the upper hand. Not only are they saying they're going to continue this fight, at least in the short term militarily, but they're also saying politically they have a game plan. And that, as far as I can tell, in Washington, should be a wake-up call, because whatever political agenda President Trump had in terms of changing Iran, right now that agenda is not happening. Mujtaba Khamenei's name has been floating around for years as a potential, and actually some would say likely, successor to his father. And yet we have plenty of evidence that his father had been against it. And his father had said, I do not want my son to take over from me, because that would become a successor from a son to a father. From a father to a son, which is exactly what the Islamic Revolution of 1979 was all about, to end hereditary succession. So the fact that Mojtaba Khamenei is now the new supreme leader, tells us much more about power politics in the system today. The hardliners have the upper hand. If they didn't, Mojtaba Khamenei's appointment would have been a question mark. Now it's become a certainty. When it comes to Mojtaba Khamenei, there are two things we need to watch out for. One, we already kind of know, which is he comes from that ideological core part of the Islamist system. His background has not, despite the fact that he's a cleric, but really he's more of an intelligence person more than anything else. He's very close to the Revolutionary Guards. He is one who believes in the use of force against both domestic opponents and foreign adversaries. He has not, as far as I can tell, over the 20 so years we've known him, expressed any opinion that suggests he is a reformist of any sort. So he's an Islamist revolutionary hardliner. At least that's his track record. But here's the thing that we need to keep in mind as well. The Iranian regime is under immense pressure, both from outside, but also from within. So the big question is, which turn would he potentially take going forward? Mojtaba Khamenei could reinvent himself. He doesn't have to be the Mojtaba Khamenei of the last 20 years. He could be very different going forward for the sake of the survival of the regime, which means compromising at home, which means compromising abroad. His father did the same thing. His father was not a hardliner in 1989 when he took over, but he reinvented himself and became a hardliner. His son, this fellow Mojtaba Khamenei, could do the opposite, go in a different direction. Now, that will take time. He has some obviously strong support base in the Revolutionary Guards. For now, I don't think he's going to express anything that would suggest reform or what Donald Trump would call capitulation. That's not going to happen. But what could happen is if this war somehow ends and this system survives, then they have some real tough decisions to make, because their problems are fundamentally not with Donald Trump. The problem of the Islamist regime is with the Iranian people. And that is why Mojtaba Khamenei, if his advisors tell him the truth, would have another hard look at the society that his father brought to the brink of disaster, and perhaps choose to chart a different course going forward. So much depends on the overall Israeli strategy. If they decide to double down, if they really decide to maintain this sort of confrontation and stay in this war in days, weeks, months to come, that's a political decision. It comes down to what Prime Minister Netanyahu wants to do. And it also comes down to the capacity of the Israelis to stay in this war, particularly if the United States decides to look for a way out. But if they decide to stay in this war, and if regime change is what they want ultimately to achieve, what we do know from the Israelis is a significant capacity to do what they say they will do when it comes to assassinating the adversaries that they identify. They did that with the leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hassan Nasrallah. They've done it with other people that Israel has considered threats to their national security. So We also know the Israelis have, in recent years, badly infiltrated the Islamist regime in Tehran. So if the Israelis do decide to assassinate him, and there will be a political cost associated with that, but that's something they have to decide. If they decide to assassinate him, in terms of capacity to do so, should not be dismissed. Mujtaba Khamenei has very good reason to be worried about his survival, and I'm sure he will go out of his way, and his supporters will make sure he's secure to the extent that they can secure his physical well-being. But again, we shouldn't underestimate Israel's capacity, since they've infiltrated the Iranian regime so much, their capacity to find him and to assassinate him if that's what they choose to do politically. As of today, it does not look like it's going to happen. And as of today, President Trump's biggest challenge now is, can he call this a victory? Can you walk away and say, I achieved what I wanted to achieve? He can say the killing of Ali Khamenei was what he wanted to do. That represents regime change. Many will be doubtful that it has actually achieved anything significant. In fact, you could say leaving Mojtaba Khamenei in charge of Islamic Republic, someone who might not have become supreme leader. And now, because the conditions of war made it easier for this 56-year-old to become the supreme leader, and the United States leaves him in power and walks away, there's a relatively young man in charge of a pretty large country in the Middle East with a lot of desire to seek revenge for years to come. And that, I don't know how you can possibly portray that as anything that looks like victory for the United States, but President Trump might just do that.